Hey guys, I am actually doing a rewatch of Game of Thrones, and right now I'm on like season 3, and I really was drawn to create a video about Robert Baratheon because Robert, I almost forgot that he like legitimately might be one of the most like complex and interesting characters in all of Game of Thrones and like A Song of Ice and Fire, and he's like barely in the series. And of course, it's because, spoiler alert, he dies. But the amount of social commentary and I think an exploration of masculinity that George was able to put into Robert, I think is really, really cool. I mean, of course, there's like a whole bunch of reasons why he's an awesome character, but I really do think the way that he interacts with his self-identity and then with Ned as another man is just really cool and really interesting. And I think, honest to God, even though George wrote the book back in like 1990 to 1995, and the first season aired in like 2011, I think that there's a lot of like modern day parallels to be able to like investigate with Robert, because a lot of the ways that he approaches life and women and friends and coping, I think are super pertinent and super relevant today. And I wanted to be able to kind of even like break down and like talk about some of the scenes like that he's in, because again, just stuff that I think is like really cool to be able to talk about, aside from him just being like a freaking awesome character too. Yeah, and I think the first thing that I did want to mention is legit just like Robert being like, I think really a masculine icon. Like, aside from him being freaking hilarious.
Go find the breastplate stretcher! Now!
The breastplate stretcher.
How long before he figures it out?
Robert, I think on purpose, was supposed to be the stereotypical fantasy hero, right? Like, that's like the whole point. Like, he was the one who rose up in rebellion against like the crazy king emperor character who was like evil and wanted to burn everybody.
Burn them all!
And I mean, George does this a lot, right? Like, he takes subversions of like well-known fantasy tropes and kind of like turn them on his head, right? So like, he doesn't have actual dwarves in his world, but he made Tyrion a dwarf and then had him live under like a mountain literally made of like gold, right? Which is kind of like Tolkien. Freaking Rhaegar is a dragon that put basically like a princess in a tower and guarded her.
The princess will be up the stairs in the highest room in the tallest tower.
What makes you think she'll be there?
I read it in a book once.
Well, cool. You handle the dragon, I'll handle the stairs.
Yeah, Robert is the main character of a story told long ago. He's like the hero that we all kind of like idolize in the stories, but his story is told like after, and George has been, I think, pretty obvious about this too. He literally has given like entire quotes. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so this is the whole thing with like Robert and George, because I think a lot of dudes have these aspirational ideas about success and what success means for them. You know, that could be getting the job, getting the girl, getting married, or they have some like goal, whether it be like getting to the league, you know, like I did, or a whole bunch of other stuff. But there's not a lot, I think, of thought put into like, what is my life going to be like after I fulfilled those things? Because your life doesn't end because you've achieved your goal. There's a whole separate life to be lived and new goals to make, and we can't become empty and not plan for what we're supposed to be as men once we've kind of like gotten, because I think a lot of men think it's going to fulfill them, right? So like George writes, ruling is hard. This is maybe my answer to Tolkien, whom, as much as I admire him, I do quibble with. Lord of the Rings had a very medieval philosophy that if the king was a good man, Robert, initially, the land would prosper. We look at real history and it's not that simple though. Tolkien can say that Aragorn became king and reigned for 100 years and he was wise and good, but Tolkien doesn't ask the questions, what was Aragorn's tax policy? Did he maintain a standing army? What did he do in times of flood and famine? And what about all these orcs? By the end of the war, Sauron is gone, but all of the orcs aren't gone. They're in the mountains. Did Aragorn pursue a policy of systemic genocide and kill them? Even the little baby orcs in their little orc cradles? And obviously, the exploration of Robert here is what George is talking about, right? And even though he doesn't, I think, explicitly kind of like state anything on like a masculine basis, I think Robert being the hero king who essentially kind of like falls from grace and glory is George's commentary on medieval masculinity and modern masculinity. Like the fact that like, you know, Robert can be like this guy and be everything that I think a typical dude wants and get everything he wants and then just become this guy. You know, like I think it's a really cool, especially just from like a top-down way of thinking about it, a cool exploration of the reality of what it means to achieve your dreams as a dude but still kind of be empty, because that's what Robert is. He's empty.
I can't even remember what she looked like. I only know she was the one thing I ever wanted.
To me, again, like, there are so many dudes who I think can relate to. I mean, so much of Robert I think is really cool because it's just so in tune with how men can struggle, right? I think there's a lot of guys out there who put their entire worth in being in a relationship or finding that love and thinking it will fulfill them. And like, if that's you, that's not the case, right? And Robert's a broken man for like many reasons. And obviously I think he's a bit more traumatized than anything else, but his coping strategy wasn't to try to find somebody else or try to better himself. Robert literally just like drank and slept all of his worries away. He drowned them. He again, very, I think, like prototypically just did what dudes do, right? Like he did not see Ned for 17 years, didn't talk to him. John Aaron, who basically was his father figure, tried to get him to stop, but he didn't, and he just was a sex and alcohol addict. And for a dude, I mean, he's literally, by the way, like the poster child for like dudes like not getting over a woman and having your kind of like whole identity tied up in early romanticism. This is why dudes become very bitter, by the way, is because we're very vulnerable when we start out. It's been 2 weeks, he must have forgotten about me. Boys after 17 years, Robert Baratheon. Like it's I think an issue where, because of the way that guys talk to each other, in a lot of instances we're not comfortable being hurt or rejected by women, and we'd rather just like either think that women and femininity is lesser because of the rejection, and thinking something is inadequate that rejected you. It's just like, oh, well, I didn't want that anyway, right? And becoming bitter over women. Or the flip side for a lot of dudes is that they just never move on. They never become healthy. They never move on. They constantly like think and wallow, and they allow themselves to like sink into that pit. And that's very dangerous, obviously. Like, I don't have to explain that to you. But Robert is like the pure example of that. He is like the peak of, I think, of an example of what happens when you are just a stagnant person, right? Like, again, he was this huge, hulking, like massive figure, like the pinnacle of what, you know, valiance and leadership was supposed to be. And he eventually became, like, again, an obese alcoholic who had horrible anger issues. And this is another thing about Robert Baratheon, why I think he's just so cool. Again, every single part is just emblematic of, I think, something that a lot of emotionally hurt men deal with.
One king, 7 kingdoms. Do you think honor keeps them in line? Do you think it's honor that's keeping the peace? It's fear. Fear and blood.
Then we're no better than the Mad King.
Careful, Ned. Careful now.
Robert has no self-control, and a huge part of this obviously is like him being king, right? Like he just hasn't been told no for a very long time, but his immediate response to everything is just to be angry. It's to, and we wonder where like Joffrey gets it from, right? Like obviously he's better than Joffrey, but like he dogs out Ned.
I thought you were a better man.
Out, damn you, I've done with you. Go run back to Winterfell. I'll have your head on a spike.
Yeah. And of course, like, if we know, Robert is completely obsessed, and I think more emotionally invested in the harm that was done to Lyanna rather than Lyanna herself.
Someone took her away from me. And 7 kingdoms couldn't fill the hole she left behind.
But I think that's like an interplay with, again, how real world situations happen with a lot of dudes. Robert thought of Lyanna as his. And I'm not going to go as far as like as property, but like he was like, oh yeah, she's an extension of me. She's mine. I was supposed to be with her, and these people took her from me. And his love for Lyanna, I think you could argue, is real. But the thing that is strange is that he has this like active, ongoing hatred for people who have wronged him in the past, to the point where he wants to like murder a 17-year-old girl that he has never met and that like has never met him. And Robert knows this is wrong, right? Like, I mean, he literally says it.
The girl. Daenerys. You were right. Varys, Littlefinger, my brother, worthless.
Yeah. And again, I think it's really cool that George and D&D were able to put this in the books and the show, because like, I think really important for characters not to just exemplify like the negative aspects of maybe like a societal or gender issue or moral issue, but for some part of the story, but maybe especially that character, to reflect on it and endorse the correct way of thinking. Like Robert understands, yeah, I'm just an angry, bitter old man. And I am wanting to cause pain to people who have caused pain to me. And it doesn't work. All it does is it continuously embitter him. And he can't have like a proper relationship. I mean, just look how he treats Cersei and Joffrey.
I should wear the armor, and you the gown.
Wear it in silence, or I'll honor you again.
Yeah, like he's the king, but he's also completely insecure and super sensitive, right? Like that's like the great, I think, paradox of like the alpha male, is that like you have achieved all the power in the world, or maybe even all the power in your specific social circle. Again, you have the pretty wife, you have the awesome job, you have the status, and like the moment someone attacks you on like even a minor level, you like lash out like a child. And you have no self-assuredness, which again, I think is really funny, because even though he's a terrible character, there's another character who kind of like points out how ridiculous it is to throw temper tantrums when you have power, because real power doesn't need to be loud. Real power is self-evident, and you know who it is.
I am the king. I will punish you.
Any man who must say, I am the king, is no true king.
And I am not endorsing Tywin as like a good character, as far as like literally like morally good. But Tywin is an amazing example of someone who is confident enough in themselves that they don't need the approval of others or mind like the chiding of others. In many cases, Tywin is still flawed, and there's obviously things that he does that I think do kind of like seep into him caring. And Jamie points this out like a little bit in their conversation at the very beginning of the show.
You spend too much time worrying about what other people think of you. A lion doesn't concern himself with the opinions of the sheep. And every day that he remains a prisoner, the less our name commands respect.
So the lion does concern himself with the opinions.
No, that's not an opinion, it's a fact.
But Robert is like far worse. And it's all about like showing, for Robert, it's all these expressions of his masculinity, like what he needs for other people to know.
You watch me out there. I still know how to point a lance.
You've no business jousting. Leave that for the young men.
Why? Because I'm king? Piss on that. I want to hit somebody.
And who's gonna hit?
Like, why Robert knows. Robert knows he can't joust. Robert knows that he can get on a horse and fight against those young dudes, but like he wants to. It's like these outward expressions to validate him because of the emptiness that he has in him. It's literally all performative. That's all Robert is, and he's sad because of it. And that's the reason he loves Ned so much, because with Ned he can be genuine. And that's why dudes, I think, for a lot of reasons, fall into dude-centric, especially now, dude-centric circles, right? Where like they are validated and find a solace in other guys. The most genuine Robert ever is in any parts of the show is when he's talking about like war stories, or when he talks about like Ned being his brother.
Send a raven. I want you to stay. I'm the king. I get what I want.
Yeah, see what I'm talking about a little bit?
I never loved my brothers.
Sad thing for a man to admit, but it's true.
You were the brother I chose.
That's, again, the reason he loves Ned so much, is because Robert feels, at least in my opinion, that Ned is the only person he can be like genuine with. He doesn't have to perform for Ned. He doesn't have to put on this like front. he doesn't have to feel like insecure. Ned has known him for his entire life. And I think it's because Robert doesn't believe that anybody else truly can care for him in the way that Ned does. And that's like super unhealthy. So many dudes, I think, lock themselves away behind like these walls. And maybe this is a particular instance because, you know, like King's Landing does suck and like everybody is out for themselves. But like, I guarantee you, like this is the whole thing actually. Freaking Jon Arryn was Robert's father figure, and Jon Arryn died. And Ned was Robert's only friend from like 17 years ago. And he's like, yeah, my only support system, these two men, my adoptive father and like my brother, who I consider my brother, are the only people I can confide in on earth. Do you know how like sad that is? That like Robert had been king for 17 years and he has two friends, one of which he hadn't spoken to for 17 years. But I think that's like a very real reality for a bunch of guys. Like they know a lot of people, but they don't like deeply become invested in a lot of people. It's, I think, a horrible cyclical thing where because of a lack of investment in others and a lack of wanting to know others and a fear of others' judgment and a fear of vulnerability, you start to confide even more and more in like the tiny support system that we have. But because of the tiny support system, we can't ever like grow as men if we don't look to interact with those people who are different from us, men or women, right? This isn't necessarily a gender divide. Largely it becomes a gender divide, but I think Robert is like a great example of like person who, again, kind of like has everything, but like really has nothing. And I thought it was just like really cool and really well done. And honestly, I could talk about this for like a whole nother like 20 some odd minutes, but I kind of just wanted to like address this and look over some of those clips because I find it really interesting. And if y'all like it, let me know and I can make like more videos like this with other characters from like other fiction or other characters from like Game of Thrones. But he's just so well done that I couldn't help myself.